Stone, and I am with Health Services in JCPS, and I want to talk to you about personal protective equipment, COVID-19, and our return to in-person learning. So the overall approach is to minimize the risk of infection through multiple mitigation measures. And we know that COVID-19 is an illness that's caused by a virus, which is spread from person to person. It's mainly spread through respiratory droplets and short-range aerosols when someone who is infected coughs, sneezes, or talks in close proximity to others. Touching infected surfaces or objects and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth is another means that the virus can be spread, but it's much less likely to be spread this way, more likely to be spread directly from person to person through those droplets. So the mitigation strategies that are in place include social distancing, cloth face coverings, policies, and personal protective equipment, screening and school exclusion, sanitation and environmental factors, and then contact tracing. So social distancing, 6 feet of social distance should be maintained at all times as much as possible. And this is one of the primary ways to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And our schools have in place plans that include social distancing, and then staff will need to consider the individual needs of their classrooms. Cloth face coverings are expected for all students and staff unless they're actively eating or drinking, or if there's a medical waiver on file. So at all times in the buildings, people should have cloth face coverings, face masks on. There are additional personal protective equipment needs for different circumstances, which we'll discuss a little bit. So screening and school exclusion. Staff health checks will be completed each day. There's a digital form that staff will need to complete every day when coming into a JCPS facility. Or if you're sick and not at school, you should still fill out this health check because that's one of the ways that we'll know people are symptomatic. Students and staff will have temperature checks each day when they arrive at school. And anyone who has a temperature greater than 100.4 will be excluded from school. School should have a plan in place to recheck if a temperature is elevated after someone has rested in a cooler environment for about 10 minutes. And the reason is these are surface thermometers. And so if somebody is hot, if they've been sitting in a car with the heat blasting, it can give an false elevated reading, and so there should be plans to recheck when someone has an elevated temperature. Students and staff should not attend school with a fever or other symptoms of COVID, and they can return to school or work when they're fever-free for 24 hours, and that's without the use of fever-reducing medicines. Hand hygiene is also very important, and hand washing and the use of hand sanitizer should be done frequently throughout the day, especially if somebody's eating and drinking. High-touch areas should have extra cleaning, and then plans are in place with all of the schools related to cleaning and disinfecting. Contact tracing is also a strategy that's in place, and when students or staff report a positive case of COVID-19, the JCPS contact tracing plan should be followed, and there are contact tracers assigned to every school and building. And we want to minimize the risk of environmental exposure. And again, these are the things that work all together to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. So that's the social distancing, the cloth face coverings, policies, and personal protective equipment, screening and school exclusion, again, the sanitation and environmental factors, and then contact tracing. Very important that all these factors work together to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And even with vaccination of staff, it's still important to have these mitigation factors in place. So use personal protective equipment, especially when the risk of exposure is higher. Nearly all students who are 2 and above can wear a cloth face covering that securely cover the nose and mouth. Practice and modeling will increase success, and then staff should use additional personal protective equipment for procedures that can increase your risk for exposure. For social distancing, we want to ensure that desks are spaced out in classrooms. Note and mark those areas where students may congregate. And then, of course, you've made plans for meals and plans for recess. So masks. Cloth face masks are, again, required for all students and staff unless there's a medical waiver on file. Masks should have 2 or more layers. The mask should fit securely over your nose and mouth and under the chin. And then again, masks should not be worn by children under 2 or people who have trouble breathing or people who can't take the mask off themselves for assistance. And those would be individuals who would need to have medical waivers on file. Masks should have 2 or more layers of washable, breathable fabric. Face shields should not replace the use of a mask unless there's a medical waiver on file to do that. So face shields are something that it's okay to wear over cloth masks as an extra layer of protection, but unless there's a medical statement on file, they should not be used without the face covering, the cloth face covering. You've seen folks wear gaiters. If gaiters are worn, they need to be at least, they need to be 2-layer gaiters, or they need to be folded to be at least 2 layers. And that all comes from the CDC website. So again, you want to choose masks that have 2 or more layers of washable, breathable fabric that completely cover the nose and mouth, and they fit snugly against the sides of the face and don't have gaps. You don't want to choose masks that make it hard to breathe. Exhalation valves or vents aren't recommended because they can actually allow virus particles to escape. So again, if you wear a gaiter, it should have 2 layers or be folded to make it 2 layers. And then face shields are not generally recommended for use alone unless there's a medical waiver on file. They can be used in addition to face coverings. If you wear glasses, find a mask that fits closely over your nose or one that has a nose wire, which can help limit the fogging of your glasses. So again, wear a mask correctly and consistently for the best protection. Be sure you wash your hands before you put on a mask and don't touch the mask when wearing it. And then there's some examples of the ways not to wear a mask. You see lots of people doing this, lots of places. Shouldn't be worn around the neck or on the forehead, under the nose. That's how my mom likes to wear her mask, but it really needs to cover the nose to help protect you and other people. And again, only on your nose, on your chin, dangling from your ear. Those are not effective ways to wear a mask. To take off the mask, untie the strings behind your head or stretch the ear loops. Handle the mask only by the ear loops or ties. Fold the corners together and then be careful not to touch your eyes, nose, or mouth, and wash your hands once the mask has been removed. Masks should be washed regularly unless they're disposable. If they're disposable, they should be thrown away when you're finished with it, but generally the cloth mask should be washed regularly. Always remember to remove your mask correctly and wash your hands after handling or touching a used mask. The mask can be included with your regular laundry. Use the regular laundry detergent, the warmest appropriate water setting, and then the highest heat setting when drying it in the dryer. We've got a video available in the district that can be used to teach about hand washing, and that's something that can be shown in the classroom. It's in the Ask a Nurse series, and the link is available in these slides, but you can also search the title, Hand Washing and Reducing the Spread of Respiratory Illness. Again, COVID-19 is a respiratory virus, and it's mainly spread through droplets created when a person who is infected coughs, sneezes, or talks. So again, protect yourself by using social distance, wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, or using a hand sanitizer that's at least 60% alcohol at key times, which would be anytime you've touched surfaces, anytime you've touched things that other people have touched, anytime you're preparing to eat or drink, once you've removed your mask, all important times to wash your hands. And then practice those everyday preventive actions, which we've talked about, ways to protect yourself. Just a little about gloves. You'll see lots of people wearing gloves, and overall, gloves aren't needed as a general rule, because when you're putting on gloves and just wearing gloves for your everyday activities, if you still have that tendency to touch your face or to touch other things, then that still can prevent the spread of COVID from one person to another. So, wearing gloves outside of these instances, for example, when you're just going to use a shopping cart or using an ATM, won't necessarily protect you from getting COVID-19 and may still lead to the spread of germs because, again, touching surfaces, even with gloves on, and then touching other things can still cause, transmission of COVID from one thing to another. But washing hands between touching things is a way to help prevent the spread of COVID. So the best way to help protect yourself from germs when you're running errands or you're out and about or when you're at work is to regularly wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer that's at least 60% alcohol. Face shields, as we've discussed, they don't replace cloth face coverings unless there's a medical waiver on file. They can be used in addition to cloth face masks as an extra protection, and face shields are reusable, so they can be cleaned. Gowns generally aren't indicated in a school setting unless there's procedures being performed where splashing may occur. So if splashing might occur and you want to cover your clothes, then gowns are indicated and can be used. Personal protective equipment is stocked in the central warehouse, and schools should order your standard processes, and information has gone out to the principals on how to order PPE from the warehouse. And the warehouse is stocked with masks, gowns, gloves, clear masks, thermometers, face shields, shoe covers. All of those items are in stock and available at the warehouse, and some have been shipped out to schools already. If you ever have questions about the use of personal protective equipment, please call Health Services. We're glad to talk to you and answer any questions you might have. That's 485-3387.